folks, welcome to Outdoors with Bud. I'm your host, Bud Fields. Well, the Indiana weather's finally decided to cooperate with us. We've got a nice sunny day. It's a little bit cool, but at least we don't have no 35 to 40 mile an hour wind, rain, or snow. So we decided to come out and do some outdoor shooting. I got a request here a while back from some people. I wrote an article about, I was comparing spinning reels with bait casting reels. Which is better? Well, it all depends on how you're going to use them. Well, a couple individuals wanted to know if I could describe some of the adjustments that could be made on these reels to where they would perform better. So I'm going to start out talking about a bait casting reel. A bait casting reel, a lot of people will have nightmares about it because they've heard of the backlash. That's where the line over spools, and I've had them so bad you couldn't even see the reel. Well, most of the time you're going to have to cut all that line off of there, but there are a few adjustments that you can make to these reels, and with a little bit of practice you can eliminate over 90% of those backlashes. Okay, the first thing I'm going to show you is that I'm right-handed, so I'm going to be holding this rod and reel in my right hand. Now on a right-handed reel, the reel handle is on the right hand side. There's normally two finger grips on it to where you crank it and that will bring your line in. Okay, one of the adjustments that you need to make is right here. It looks like the star on a cowboy boot. This is the adjustment for the drag. The drag is how much pressure is put against the spool when you hook into a fish. If you get it set too tight, if you catch a very big fish, it's going to bust your line, and nobody wants that to happen. But a lot of fish are lost because of having the drag improperly set. Now what you want to do to increase the pressure on that drag, which makes it harder for that line to come off of that before it goes into free spool, to turn this adjustment on the side that looks like that spur, you turn it clockwise. That's going to make it a little more harder to pull the line out. If it's too tight, you want to back it up. You can just simply do that with your thumb. Take it forward or backwards. Okay, now the other adjustment, which I think is more critical, is the clutch adjustment. All right, what you need to do every time you change a lure, whether you're going from a crankbait to a spinner bait, any kind of a lure, you need to reset that clutch adjustment. Now what that is, there's a button right here where I've got my thumb. That's your release button. When you push that in, that's going to activate that spool into what they call free spool mode. It's going to, if you cast that out there, that spool is going to rotate and that line's going to fly off of it. Now, what you want to do, you might want to get at the top of the lure now, at the top of the rod. Put that lure about 6 or 8 inches from the top of the line and back that adjustment off until that lure drops. See how fast that's dropping? I'm going to reel that back up and show you again. That's too fast. You want it about half that speed. Okay, I'm going to bring it back up. Now it's going down real slow. And that's about what you want right there. Now, that thumb bar that I was telling you about, some bait casting reels have a thumb release, or thumb release up here on the side of the handle here. But mine happens to be right here, right in line with the reel spool. Now what you're going to do when you go to cast this, I'm going to be holding the rod in my right hand. I'm going to take my right thumb and push it in, activating that spool. But I've got my thumb right here on the reel spool. What I'm doing, I'm preventing that from the line going out. Well, when you cast, what you want to do when you make a cast is when that line, just before that lure hits the water, you want to use what is referred to as an educated thumb. If you don't slow that reel spool down, that lure is going to hit that water, but that line is going to continue to roll off of that reel, and that's when it's going to butterfly and cobweb up and look like a bird's nest, and you're going to lose a lot of line because 9 times out of 10 you're going to have to go in there with some fingernail clippers or something, or scissors, and cut that line, take all that line off and re-spool it. Now with a little bit of practice, I've had guys get these. I had a friend of mine at Chrysler. He wanted a bait casting reel because he heard that's what everybody was using. His wife got him one for Christmas. He didn't know anything about the adjustments, and he's like a lot of us guys, and I hate to admit that I'm one of them. I don't like to read directions. It was telling him how to make these adjustments that I just described to you. He went out there, put all that line on there, and when he casted it out there, nobody told him about putting his thumb on there to slow that spool down. He had so much line come up on that you could not see that reel. This was a $200 reel. He brought it to work. He knew I bass fish, and he asked me, do I know anybody that would be interested in buying that reel? I told him, I said, I thought you wanted that for Christmas. He said, I did. He said, but I don't like it. He said, I can't even see it because of all that line. I said, well, I can put the word out. I ended up getting a deal on a $200 reel for less than $75 because nobody explained to this man what he needed to do. I told him, I said, let me teach you what you need to do and make the adjustments. If you're willing to come out to my house, we'll go out in my backyard and I will instruct you. Within 10 or 15 minutes, he was wanting to buy that reel back, and I said I'd take $195 for it. But anybody can learn how to use this, and there's no use for anybody to be afraid of it. Once again, when you throw that out there, just before that lure hits the water, you want to put your thumb on that and slow that down, or you're going to get a big backlash. Now, most of these reels, you can buy them in any sporting goods stores, Dunham's, Dick's Sporting Goods, any place like that. But if you learn how to use it and use it right, you're not going to go wrong. The ability to use something like this, you can use a lot heavier line, you can use a bigger lure, and you can power fish, and you can land some of the bigger fish. Now, if anybody's got any questions on that, you can go back and watch this segment a couple times, and I think if once you learn it and find out what you're doing, you're welcome to come out to my house. I'll give you free lessons, but anybody can use a bait caster. Okay, I'm going to get the other reel that we're going to talk about. Okay, this is a spinning reel. If you remember on that bait caster, the reel was on top. This is designed for the reel to hang down. I have seen a lot of beginners at the reservoir fishing off the bank. They're fishing with this upside down like this, which is throwing that off balance. You take your hand off of it, it wants to roll down. But the guy was actually casting it out there and reeling it backwards, and that's the way he thought you had to use it. Well, I hope I didn't embarrass the guy, but I thought I'd help him out, and I showed him. Now, the proper way to use this reel, as you can see, it's hanging down. You can see the little part right here, the reel mount. What you want to do, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to be holding this rod and reel in my right hand. You need to put 2 fingers behind this and 2 fingers in front of it, and put your thumb right over the top of the cork right there. Now, that's going to prove, and I can show you how balanced that is. It ought to be right about here. It ought to be pretty close, and it is. Now, you can see why that weight being up here would make it inefficient. Now, what you want to do when you go to cast this thing out, well, let me show you the adjustments. There's less adjustments on this than what was on the bait caster. Number one, the drag adjustment on some of them are here on the front. You turn it the same way. If you want to increase the drag amount, you turn it clockwise. You want to decrease it, which makes it easier to pull the line out, you turn it counterclockwise. Now, some spinning reels will have a little dial back here on the back. That's where the drag is. It's either right here on the back or it's right here on the front. I've got some of both, and I like them both. Now, as I said, you're going to put 2 fingers in front and in back. I'm going to turn this around this way and show you from the other side. This is the way it ought to look. I've seen guys grip it back here. Well, when you're gripping it back here, you're losing about 80% of the sensitivity of that rod. You don't want to hold it back here because then it gets top heavy. Straddle finger it, put your thumb over here. Now, there's a reason for that. I just showed you where the drag adjustment was. I'm going to turn it back over here. Now, on the front, you see this little wire? This is referred to as a bail. What this does, your line comes over this and it keeps it back. When you get ready to cast, you take your index finger, okay? You take your index finger and you pinch that line, you pull it up to the rod, just like that. I hope you can see that. You open that bail. Now you're ready to cast it out there. Now the only other adjustment that you have on this is right here on the bottom. Right there, you're taking it out of free spool. Now years ago, you could do that with some of them, and you could, now when you take that out of free spool, you can actually back reel this like this. You click that right here, it's only going to go right here and it'll stop. 99% of your fishing will be like that. Now when you go to cast this, one out, you simply just reel it up there to where the line's at the top. You take your index finger and you pull that line up and hold it. You take your other hand, you bring that bail over. Now you're ready to cast. All you got to do is just simply cast it out there. Now, a lot of times when you turn that handle, did you hear that? The handle, when you turn that handle, it will close that bail. Now you watch it, it's going to flip over. Now what I like to do, I got a habit is, I close that by my hand. I mean, it's not hard to do, it don't take any time. Now the advantage of using the spinning reel is you can use much lighter equipment. Lighter weight line, you can use a lighter lure and use it effectively. Now a lot of people don't think there's a place in bass fishing for it, but there's an application that's referred to as finesse fishing. I like to use maybe 1/16 to an 1/8 ounce weight with a small worm and throw it out there. And a lot of times the fish don't want something big, it wants something small, especially early part of the year in the early spring when the water's cool. Now once it warms up, the water temperature warms up, the fish are going to be more active. Now which is better? You can use both of them for anything. A lot of people that fishes for panfish like bluegill, crappie, walleye and perch, they like to use this because it's lighter weight and they can use it effectively. But you can use it in bass fishing applications. It's won me a lot of money just like that.